You crave closeness deeply, and when you finally get it, something inside of you panics. Maybe you feel overwhelmed or numb, or suddenly you want to run from the exact person that you have been longing for. You push people away after they finally get what you wanted. You feel safest alone, but loneliest when you actually are. And the question that keeps coming up at night is, why would my own nervous system want closeness and fear it at the same time? That question has an answer, a neuroscience answer, and today we're going to go deep on it, okay? Because here's what I want you to know before we even get started. If any of this sounds like you, you're not broken. Okay, you're not bad at love. Your nervous system learned something under impossible conditions, and it can learn something new. Okay, today we're talking about disorganized attachment, what it actually is, where it comes from, and most importantly, exactly how to heal it. And by the way, my name's Cody. I've got a degree in cognitive neuroscience. I'm trained in a trauma therapy called internal family systems, and I study this stuff for a living. Over 1 million women trust me to help them navigate breakups and heartbreak to prepare them for modern dating, because I say the hard things, but I do it with love and I do it with science, okay? I have got a lot to cover, so stay with me through this entire video because the healing section is at the very end where I walk you kind of through everything and bring all of the different pieces together. Okay, so you don't want to bail early and miss this one. Let's dive in. First of all, what is disorganized attachment really? It's a great place to start. Most people have heard of anxious attachment and avoidant attachment, but disorganized attachment is completely different and it's widely misunderstood. Okay, the most common mistake I see in people describing it is just being anxious and avoidant, like you've got both at the same time, but that's not what it is. Disorganized attachment is an approach avoidance conflict happening inside your nervous system. Your brain learned two things at the same time. I need you to survive and you're not safe at the exact same time in the same relationship. Let me show you how this compares to kind of some of the other attachment styles, just so you can compare and contrast a little bit. So with secure attachment, closeness feels regulating. After conflict, the nervous system finds a way back to its baseline. Love feels safe and predictable. With an anxious attachment style, closeness is regulating, but distance is threatening. So the nervous system activates and pursues connection to get back to safety, okay? And then with avoidant attachment, it's the opposite. Distance feels regulating, closeness feels threatening. So the nervous system deactivates and pulls away to preserve autonomy. Then there's disorganized attachment. Closeness feels threatening, distance also feels threatening, okay? There's no stable strategy. The nervous system is caught in a loop with absolutely nowhere to go. That's not anxious plus avoidant. That's a nervous system with no freaking exit. Okay, so what's the neuroscience behind this? From the neuroscience or brain science lens, disorganized attachment forms when the person you depend on for safety is also a source of fear. This creates what's called a biologically unsolvable dilemma. Here's what's happening in your brain. The attachment system, which is driven by oxytocin and ventral vagal pathways and your limbic bonds, pulls you towards connection. While the threat system, your amygdala, your sympathetic activation, your dorsal vagal shutdown, pushes you away from the same person. Okay, there's no coherent response available. So the nervous system does the only thing that it can, it fragments. This is why disorganized attachment is so strongly associated with association, emotional whiplash, sudden shifts in how you perceive people closest to you. That terrifying feeling of, I don't know why I just shut down, or explode, or completely disappear from myself. Your prefrontal cortex simply cannot integrate what your survival brain learned, okay? I want you to really sit with that and think about what it means for a second. Imagine living inside a system that cannot find safety anywhere, not in connection, not in distance, just freaking stuck. That's what it is. And understanding that is actually the first step towards healing it, okay? So what kinds of things actually create disorganized attachment? It's a great question, okay? It comes from, again, when the nervous system is experiencing the same attachment figure as both secure and a source of fear. Not sometimes, not abstractly, in the same relationship, okay? This is critical. That's why I'm repeating it, because it's different from other styles. Anxious attachment forms when safety is inconsistent. Avoidant attachment forms when safety is rejected or unavailable or there's neglect. But disorganized attachment forms when safety is frightening. These kids or adults, we'll get there, are left with no viable nervous system strategy to get relief. So let me just walk you through exactly how this happens. We're going to talk about the kids first, how this happens when we're kids, and then we'll talk about adult onset, which is actually a thing. So there's a couple ways that this can happen, or how a child develop a disorganized attachment. Okay, disorganized attachment can form when a kid cannot predict whether or not approaching their caregiver is going to lead to comfort or danger. So let's get really specific here. Number one, if a caregiver is emotionally attuned and then suddenly terrifying. Okay, so imagine a parent who is loving, affectionate, and playful, and then out of nowhere, something shifts. They become rageful, threatening, or just cold and cruel. It's not no warning, no buildup, just a switch that gets flipped. Okay, this usually isn't a bad parent who doesn't love their child. More often, it's actually a human. Okay, it's a parent carrying their own unresolved trauma, a trigger, a memory that they never process. It activates their nervous system, and suddenly they're not responding to the kid anymore. They're responding to something in their own past. Okay, the kid has no way to make sense of this. They didn't do anything wrong. There was no signal. There was no warning. The person who was just holding them safely is now a source of fear. From the kid's perspective, or from their nervous system's perspective, really, the same person who soothes me also scares me. That's what it's kind of saying to itself. The attachment system says go towards. The threat system says get away. And there is no solution. The nervous system learned just to brace for impact, even inside of love. Okay, it's kind of wild. So I talk about, if you want to do what's best for your kids, the number one thing that you should do is make sure that you are working on yourself. Surprise, surprise. Number two, second thing that can lead to disorganized attachment in kids is a caregiver that is a source of comfort after being a source of fear. Okay, so this is one of the clearest patterns that we see. Okay, a parent yells, explodes, or emotionally overwhelms a kid, and then the child becomes scared and dysregulated, and then the same parent tries to comfort that kid. So essentially what's going on in their head is, I am scared of you, but you are also the only one who can calm me. This is specifically where disorganization emerges. Okay, it's not just insecurity. Okay, number three, this is when a caregiver dissociated, is depressed, or is just unpredictably not there. Fear doesn't have to be loud or damaging, right? So sometimes the most disorienting thing a kid can experience isn't rage or cruelty, it's just emptiness. A caregiver who is physically present but psychologically gone, right? There's no doubt they go emotionally blank, they just disappearing behind their eyes, and then minutes later they're warm again like nothing freaking happened. Okay, this is often a parent dealing with depression or dissociation or unprocessed grief of their own. They're not trying to frighten their kid, but from the kid's perspective, from their nervous system perspective, sometimes you're here and sometimes you vanish, and I never know which version of you I'm going to get, right? The nervous system can actually adapt to consistent hardship, but it can't really find solid ground in a relationship where that keeps shifting without explanation. Unpredictability registers as danger at a survival level, and even when nothing overtly scary is happening, a kid learns to stay on alert, always scanning, always bracing, even in the quiet moments. Okay. All right. Number four is role reversal, or parentification, as I like to call it. Okay. I see this one constantly, especially in high achieving type A women who look like they've got it all together on the outside. It happens when the kid becomes the emotional regulator for the parent. Maybe it was during a divorce or a family crisis, or just the ongoing weight of a parent who couldn't hold their own emotions. Okay. The kid learns that they're the only safe one, only loved when they're being strong. When they have needs, things get uncomfortable. When they take care of you, they belong. So they stop having needs, or at least they stop showing them. Okay. And they start to think, if I need you, I'm unsafe. If I take care of you, I belong. Okay. You can probably see how that plays out in adult relationships. Closeness starts to feel like responsibility and danger, but distance feels like abandonment. Okay. There's nowhere comfortable to land. This is a really common pattern, right? I can't even imagine feeling like this. It would be so tough. Okay. Number five, abuse is present. Okay. But it's intermittent or followed by care. Okay. This is probably one of the hardest ones to talk about. But it's a very, very, very common root of disorganized attachment. Okay. And I want to be clear. Abuse doesn't have to be physical. Emotional and psychological abuse can be just as disorienting, and in some ways even harder to identify because there's no visible point to it. Okay. Here's what's really important though. Consistent abuse actually tends to create avoidant attachment, right? The nervous system finds a strategy: stay away, stay small, don't need anything. But when abuse is intermittent or mixed with genuine love, affection, and remorse, that's where disorganization comes from. Okay. Like, I didn't mean it. I love you so much. You're all I have. Right. And they actually mean it. There are people, parents, that say this, and they actually mean this. Okay. As wild as that sounds, it apparently is, I'm telling you, genuinely means it, which makes it so much more confusing than if they didn't. Okay. Because the kid can't map safety onto anyone or anything. Then the person hurting them is also the person loving them, and their nervous system has no coherent way to respond to that. Whose would? So they stop trying to find one. And so those are some of the most common ways, not the only ways, but some of the most common ways it can show up in childhood. What about, can disorganized attachment emerge in adulthood? Yes. Okay. And this is a question that I get all the freaking time. A lot of women that I work with don't have obviously traumatic childhoods, right? They describe themselves as relatively secure generally until a specific relationship broke something open. And that's not them being traumatic. That's a disorganized fear-based attachment pattern emerging in adulthood. And it is very real, for real. Okay. It emerges the same way it does in childhood. Someone you deeply depend on becomes a source of fear, and there's no clean way out. This can happen through an abusive or coercive relationship where the person who loves you the most is also the one hurting you. It can happen through betrayal trauma. I see that all the freaking time, where a sudden discovery of infidelity or deception or something like that makes reality itself just unsafe. Okay. And one that doesn't get talked about enough from my perspective is that it can also happen with therapists. It can happen with coaches, spiritual leaders like priests and deacons and all things like that. These relationships activate the same attachment circuits as any other close bond. And when someone in that role violates boundaries, misuses the dynamic, or suddenly abandons the relationship, it can rewire attachment patterns just like any other kind of trauma. Okay. The fact that it happened in a professional context doesn't make it less real. Okay. Bottom line, the nervous system doesn't care whether this happened at age 5 or age 35. It learns the same lesson either way. The people I need cannot be trusted. And here's what matters the most. Okay. Adult onset disorganization doesn't replace your original attachment style. Okay. It layers on top of it, which is why someone can genuinely say, I was secure until this relationship, and be completely right. Either way, the path forward is the same though. The nervous system learns something, and it can learn something new. If you're not surprised already that I haven't brought in IFS, I'm bringing it in right now, okay? This is a perfect time to have a conversation about this. I'm bringing it up because internal family system gives a really one of the clearest pictures of what's actually happening here, especially with adult onset disorganization. In IFS, we understand that at our core, every person has a self. Calm, curious, connected. And when something overwhelming happens, a betrayal, an abusive relationship, a loss met with abandonment, right? Protective parts of us mobilize to make sure that it never happens again. So when someone says, I was secure until the relationship, what I often see through an IFS lens is exactly that. They were secure, right? Their core self was accessible, open, trusting. And then something happened that was too much for the system to process. So part stepped in. A part pulls away before anyone gets too close. A part that monitors for danger in every interaction. A part that would rather feel nothing than feel again. Okay. Those parts aren't problems. They aren't the problem at all. Okay. They are doing their job. They're just doing it in a way that makes love feel impossible. Okay. IFS doesn't pathologize these protective responses. It honors them. And it gently asks, does this part still need to work this hard? Is it safe for yourself to lead now? Okay. That question is really where all the healing begins. Okay. Why does this even matter for healing though? Okay. Because whether your disorganized attachment came from childhood or was acquired through an adult relationship, the path forward is fundamentally the same. You must help the nervous system learn something new and help the parts that learn to fear love feel safe enough to soften. If it formed in childhood, that tends to require slower, more developmental work, building safety from the bottom up in the body first. If it formed in adulthood, the focus is usually more on decoupling fear from attachment, processing the specific betrayal, threat, or loss that taught your system that love wasn't safe. Okay. But either way, the nervous system learned something. Okay. It can learn something new. So how exactly do you teach it something new? I'm so glad you freaking asked, imaginary viewer that I talked to as I'm creating these videos. What up? Interrupting our normal programming to announce Mind Brain Body Lab's first sponsor, Apollo Neuro. This tool I have been using for years, and I recommend it to all of my clients. Apollo is the only wearable that trains your nervous system to bounce back from stress naturally without pills. Okay, if you fall asleep fast but wake up at 2 a.m. with your mind racing, like I do sometimes, did last night even, or your wearable like Whoop, Apple Watch, or whatever is telling you that you're stressed without actually helping you, this is for you. Apollo doesn't just track your stress and sleep. It acts and is built on a decade of neuroscience research. It learns your stress patterns, calms your nervous system in real time, and helps you stay asleep using subtle vibrations. Users get up to 60 extra minutes of sleep a night, plus 40% less stress and 25% better focus. Apollo was just featured in Forbes for their vagus nerve science, and they just published a randomized pilot study suggesting it's the first wearable that helps prevent burnout. Mind Brain Body Lab subscribers get $99 off. Just hit the link in the description to grab yours. Let's dive back in. Let's get into it. Okay, healing disorganized attachment is about creating coherence where there was once contradiction. Okay, so here are 5 steps, not hacks, not affirmations, not just choose secure partners. Actual repair using neuroscience and IFS. Okay. Step number 1 is stop pathologizing your attachment. You've got to reframe this. Your attachment style is not a personality flaw. It is a brilliant survival adaptation. Your nervous system did exactly what it needed to do to survive relational danger. That's why I went so deep on where this comes from so that you can really embody this reframe. I want you to ask yourself, what did my system learn to protect me from? What would have happened if I had trusted fully? When shame drops, integration becomes actually possible. Shame keeps the nervous system rigid though. Curiosity, one of the ACs of self, from IFS perspective, curiosity allows plasticity. This isn't just motivational, it is neurologically true. Okay. Step number 2, you got to build internal safety before relational safety. Okay. This is counterintuitive, but for many people, disorganized attachment cannot heal primarily through relationships at first. Why? Because your nervous system doesn't yet distinguish intimacy from threat. So the first phase of healing is usually internal safety. This means tracking sensations in your body without needing to act on them, learning what calm feels like without another person present, developing the capacity to stay present during activation. You're teaching your nervous system, I can be activated and still safe. Without this step, relationships become re-traumatizing. You have to build the internal container for this first. Step number 3 then is resolving the fear attachment loop. Okay, this is the core wound. In disorganized attachment, love activates fear. So healing means slowly decoupling the two systems. Practically, this looks like noticing when closeness triggers a threat response, naming the fear without collapsing into it, staying present long enough for the nervous system to learn something new. Okay, this is exposure, but relational and titrated. Not flooding, not avoidance, pendulation. Small dose of closeness, return to safety, and then repeat, okay? Neuroplasticity is happening here. This is where the actual rewiring is starting to occur. Then you can go to step 4, which is developing a coherent inner attachment figure. Disorganized attachment often means there's no stable internal sense of someone has me, okay? There's no consistent internal regulator. So you got to build one. And this is where IFS and attachment repair meet neuroscience. Okay. You begin relating with yourself as predictable, protective, attuned, and non-threatening, non-frightening. Over time, your brain internalizes this relationship and something profound starts to happen. You stop needing other people to stabilize your nervous system. This is when secure attachment becomes possible. And that's the power of this work. That's why IFS is so powerful. It allows you to form that internal parent, that internal leader inside of you so that you don't need people outside of you to do this. You're not dependent on them. It gives you your agency back so you can process internal to external instead of external to internal. It's a way more powerful frame. And then last but not least, step number 5 is you got to practice repair, not perfection. Healing disorganized attachment does not mean never getting triggered, never pulling away, never feeling afraid in intimacy again. It means you notice faster, you repair sooner, and you don't disappear from yourself. Secure attachment is not the absence of rupture. It is the presence of repair. Okay. I just want to remind you that you are never broken. Everything that we've covered today, the fragmentation, the fear, the parts that would rather feel nothing than feel again, none of it means that something is wrong with you or that you're broken. It just means something happened to you. Your nervous system did exactly what it needed to survive. And now slowly you get to teach it that the rules have changed, that closeness doesn't have to mean danger, that your needs are not a threat to your belonging. Okay. On the other side of this work, love stops feeling like something that you have to survive and starts feeling like something that you can actually receive. And I promise you that is worth everything. Okay. Disorganized attachment is not the hardest attachment style to heal. It is the one that requires the most gentleness. All right. And if you haven't already hit the subscribe button, do it now so you never miss another video. And if you want to go deeper on these kinds of things, you'd love my Substack. Check out the description below. You've got this. I believe in you. Peace.